His headaches became so incapacitating that he was forced to take a rest cure at Dr. Kellogg's Battle Creek Sanitarium in Michigan, where he was diagnosed with overexertion. While the son sacrificed himself to redeem the father seemed remarkably at ease. Long away from business and free of the burden of his fortune, John D. Rockefeller, now in his mid-80s, settled into his retirement. In his old age, Sr. showed the world a side of himself only those who knew him best had ever glimpsed, as the former recluse played up to the movie cameras. Through the magic of public relations, John D. Rockefeller Sr. was transformed from a reviled robber baron into a genial old man, famous for dispensing dimes.
Don't you give her a dime, Mr. Rockefeller? Oh, go ahead.
Thank you, sir.
Every day he appeared at the golf course at 12 past 12 to indulge in his favorite pastime.
He's gay, he's lively, he's jaunty, he flirts with pretty young women. He loves to sing hymns and tell corny jokes and mimic people.
He'd spend his mornings working on the stock market, and then he would go out and golf or ride around in a car in the afternoon, but always with women or children along.
Everybody notices that he's fascinated with women. If he meets a group of pretty young women, he will invite them to play golf or come to lunch. One of his many rituals was that every afternoon at 3:15, he and 8 to 10 other people would take a drive in the country. And John D. always sat in the middle of the back seat, and he preferred to have a buxom lady to his right and one to his left. He would then take a blanket and he would draw the blanket up to their chins, and then his hands would be strung underneath to the point where the back seat became known as the hot seat. And there is a recorded episode of a young woman jumping out of the hot seat and telling the driver, "That old rooster ought to be handcuffed." So he developed a reputation for these wandering hands. And this behavior to people who had known him earlier seemed completely out of character.
As the first son and bearer of the family name, John D. Rockefeller III, a serious and introverted boy, was, from an early age, cast in the mold of dynastic heir.
His grandfather would write him at his birthday and Christmas time and say things like, "I look forward to when you can join your father in helping to carry the heavy burden," and so on. So John grew up thinking that he had a very specific role that had been delimited for him. There was not an awful lot of choice for John.
In 1929, fresh out of Princeton, John arrived at New York's most famous business address to take his assigned place helping his father run the family businesses and philanthropies. The debut of the world's richest heir attracted so much attention that Junior decided to hold a press conference.
John comes in shy, reserved, uncertain. He's never done this kind of thing before and is questioned by all of the assembled New York City press corps. They were all barking questions at him and attempting to get underneath, and John progressively withdrew as the press conference went on. One of the reporters wrote about him sort of crossing his legs and trying to twist himself into a pretzel. He was tremendously uncomfortable with the attention, and I think began to view his role as, this is very serious, I'm burdened, I'm afraid of making a mistake. And I think it was a very, very difficult moment in his life.
At the end of the painful ordeal, John wrote in his diary, "Must get out of the papers for a long time now." In 1929, John D. Rockefeller Jr. was putting the final touches on the Riverside Church, a magnificent structure he had erected on Manhattan's Upper West Side. Built on a monumental scale, Riverside resembled Europe's great cathedrals, but only in its architecture.
It certainly harks back to a Gothic cathedral, but as statues of saints and martyrs are placed around traditional cathedrals, there are statues of scientists and lawgivers. There's even a statue of Darwin in Riverside Church. Now, that's a statement.
While he remained committed to the Christian faith of his mother and grandmother, Junior had come to believe that scientific progress was an expression of God's will and the means to create God's kingdom on earth.
This is what Junior embodies, both the old and the new. The old revivalist impulse to reform the world and the new measures that are coming out of science and business. And so business-like efficiency and scientific research become the new means, the new tools for achieving the old reform crusades.
Christian fundamentalists in the 1920s saw Junior's embrace of science as a rejection of the Bible's teachings. They worried that the richest man in the world was extending his influence into the religious realm. One preacher put it in apocalyptic terms. When one man can control the financial world, the educational world, and practically the religious world, the day of the Antichrist is not far behind. By now, the Rockefeller fortune was estimated at $1 billion, invested not only in the companies that once made up Standard Oil, but also in banking and in new industries. Armed with his vast wealth, Junior had become as formidable a philanthropist as his father had been a businessman. Sometimes, he even employed similar tactics.
Father had this great love and joy in opening up wherever he was, whether it was Maine or Tarrytown or Wyoming, the beauty of nature so people could share. He took us on voyages to see America. We were camping and building log cabins and riding horseback, and we were hiking, and then Nelson and I were avid photographers. So we were taking pictures and looking for the best view wherever we went.
During a family trip to Wyoming, Junior was awed by the majestic Teton Mountains. Their beauty, he said, surpassed anything he had ever beheld. What he saw below, in the town of Jackson Hole, dismayed him.
He saw the honky-tonks and newsstands and so on that were being put in the view of the beautiful Teton Mountains, and that persuaded him to buy the land and give that to what is now a part of Grand Teton National Park.
Junior probably spent somewhere around $13 million in acquiring land around Jackson Hole, Wyoming. Initially, as did most of the Rockefellers, he bought that through a cover company. Nothing surprising. Anytime the Rockefeller name got involved, prices skyrocketed. Nothing illegal about it, though probably he got some extra special help from the Park Service identifying acreage.
The way Junior acquired the Grand Tetons was a substantial use of power. And in that sense, the philanthropic impulse is not necessarily different from Standard Oil. Remember, Senior thought that Standard Oil was not just a profit-making corporation, but a way of making the world a better place. Junior's not-for-profit enterprises were not different in that regard.
Like the independent refiners crushed by Standard Oil, local businessmen were outraged.
He encountered tremendous opposition and resentment. There were dude ranch operators and local cattlemen who felt that these were rich folks from back east who were throwing their weight around and trying to ruin their way of life. And they didn't see it as a gift. They saw it as this rich family that was pushing them around. And it was a protracted battle.
That park is beautiful, but it was developed in the way it was because Junior thought that's the way it ought to be, and he had the money and the contacts to make it happen.
For Junior, preservation provided an escape from a modern world, which he found uncomfortable. At Williamsburg, he spent $55 million to restore Virginia's